It's 2 in the morning. You're awake again. Not because of noise, not because of pain, just awake, staring at the ceiling, waiting for sleep that isn't going to come back anytime soon. Maybe you get up. Maybe you lie there for an hour. Either way, you know how the next day is going to feel before it even starts. If that's familiar, what I'm about to share with you is worth paying attention to. There's a drink that costs less than $10 at any regular grocery store. Not a supplement, not a powder, not something you have to order online. A drink, one that has been studied specifically in older adults with exactly this kind of sleep problem. And the results were significant enough that I think most people in this situation should know about it. Let's start with what's actually happening to sleep after 65. Not the version most people get told, which is basically, sleep gets worse as you age. That's normal. Here are some tips on good sleep hygiene. That's not wrong. It's just not the full picture. What changes after 65 is the architecture of sleep itself. The deep stages, slow wave sleep, the restorative phases where your body repairs tissue, consolidates memory, regulates hormones, those stages get shorter. You spend more time in the lighter stages, which means you're easier to wake and harder to keep down. And your body's natural melatonin production drops significantly with age. So you're working with less of the hormone that signals your brain it's time to stay asleep, and a sleep structure that's already more fragile than it was 10 years ago. That's the baseline. And somewhere between 40 and 70% of adults over 65 are dealing with chronic sleep problems on top of that baseline. Not occasional rough nights. Chronic, ongoing disruption, week after week. This is what most people don't connect. Poor sleep isn't just a nighttime problem. It compounds through the entire next day and through the body in ways that aren't obvious. When you don't get restorative sleep, the inflammatory processes that your body normally quiets down overnight don't fully resolve, which is why so many people with disrupted sleep also wake up with joint stiffness that takes hours to shake off. It's not a coincidence. The same overnight window that's supposed to repair tissue and cool inflammation gets cut short. There's also what happens in the brain during sleep, specifically during those deep stages. The brain has a waste clearance system that runs most actively while you sleep. It flushes out waste products, including compounds linked to cognitive decline. Cut the deep sleep short, and that clearance process doesn't complete. Over time, that accumulates, which is why chronic poor sleep is now recognized as an independent risk factor for accelerated cognitive decline. Not just tiredness, but actual long-term brain health. And then there's balance. Sleep deprivation impairs the motor functions that govern coordination and stability, the same functions that determine whether you catch yourself when you stumble or whether you don't. 1 in 4 adults over 65 experiences a fall-related injury requiring medical attention in any given year. Sleep quality is a direct contributor to that number. So when we talk about fixing sleep, we're not just talking about feeling more rested in the morning. We're talking about joint inflammation, brain health, and staying on your feet. All of it runs through the same window, and that's exactly what makes this drink worth understanding properly. The drink is tart cherry juice. Specifically Montmorency tart cherry juice. That's the variety that's been studied. You'll find it at Walmart, Target, most regular grocery stores, usually in the juice aisle or the health section. It's not expensive. A bottle typically runs between $7 and $12. Most people who've heard of tart cherry juice for sleep assume it works because cherries contain melatonin. And they do, but the melatonin content in cherry juice is actually far too small to be the primary driver. Researchers ran the numbers. The melatonin in the juice is roughly 6 to 60 times lower than the doses shown to treat insomnia in clinical trials. So if that were the whole story, it shouldn't be working as well as it does. The real mechanism is more interesting. Tart cherries contain compounds called procyanidins, a type of plant polyphenol. What procyanidins do is inhibit an enzyme in the body that normally breaks down tryptophan. When that enzyme is less active, more tryptophan stays available in your bloodstream, and tryptophan is the raw material your brain uses to produce serotonin, which then converts to melatonin overnight. So the juice isn't delivering sleep hormones, it's protecting your body's ability to make its own. That's a meaningful difference. A study published in the Journal of Medicinal Food followed 15 older adults with chronic insomnia, randomized, double-blind, crossover design, so each person received both the cherry juice and a placebo at different times. After 2 weeks on the tart cherry juice, Participants showed statistically significant reductions in waking after sleep onset. That's the middle of the night waking, the 2 a.m. ceiling stare from the opening. That specific problem improved. A follow-up pilot study looked at the mechanism more closely. Same population, adults over 50 with insomnia, and again found improvement across all sleep variables. The researchers tracked tryptophan levels and confirmed the pathway. Less enzyme activity, more tryptophan available, better sleep. Across available research, participants drinking tart cherry juice twice daily were sleeping approximately 80 to 90 minutes longer per night compared to placebo. That's not a marginal improvement. For someone who's been running on 5 broken hours, that's a different life. The dosing used in these studies is 8 ounces twice a day, once in the morning, once about an hour before bed. Not a huge amount, not an inconvenient routine. And the cluster connection is worth naming directly. The same procyanidins driving the tryptophan mechanism also have direct anti-inflammatory properties, which means the cherry juice isn't only improving sleep, it's also reducing the inflammatory activity that was keeping joints stiff overnight in the first place. 2 problems. 1 drink. The mechanism is the same. Look for juice made from Montmorency cherries specifically. That's the variety used in the research. Some products are blends or concentrates with added sugar. Check the label and aim for unsweetened or a concentrate you dilute yourself. The sugar content in sweetened versions can work against the blood sugar stability you want overnight. Water is fine. Water is important. The issue isn't water itself. It's the timing and volume of what most people are drinking in the 2 to 3 hours before bed. A lot of people over 65 are loading up on fluids in the evening, water, herbal tea, whatever they drink while watching television, and then wondering why they're waking up 2 or 3 times a night to use the bathroom. It's one of the most common sleep disruptors in this age group, and a meaningful portion of it is self-inflicted, not inevitable. The fix isn't to stop hydrating. It's to front-load your fluids earlier in the day, taper off a couple hours before bed, and replace that evening glass with something smaller, and something that actually works with your sleep chemistry rather than just sitting in your bladder. Not elimination, substitution, and timing. The second thing worth addressing is alcohol. And this one comes up constantly because a lot of people in this age group have a glass of wine or a beer in the evening as a wind-down ritual. And it genuinely feels like it helps. You fall asleep faster, so it seems like it's working. What it's actually doing is fragmenting the second half of the night. Alcohol suppresses REM sleep and causes a rebound effect a few hours after you fall asleep, which is why so many people who drink in the evening wake up around 2 or 3 a.m. and can't get back down. The first half of the night is sedation. The second half pays for it. If the 2 a.m. waking is a regular feature of your nights and you drink in the evenings, this is likely the mechanism. Worth knowing, caffeine has a half-life of about 5 to 7 hours in most adults, and that half-life lengthens with age. So a cup of coffee at 2 p.m. still has a meaningful amount of caffeine active in your system at 9 p.m. The cutoff most people use, no coffee after noon, is actually the right call, and for this age group it may need to be even earlier than that. There's a second drink worth adding alongside the cherry juice, one that works through a completely different pathway. Warm water with magnesium, specifically magnesium glycinate or magnesium citrate dissolved in warm water, drunk about an hour before bed. Magnesium activates GABA receptors in the brain, the receptors responsible for quieting neural activity and easing the brain towards sleep. When magnesium levels are adequate, that quieting process happens naturally. When they're low, it doesn't. A systematic review and meta-analysis, looking specifically at magnesium supplementation in older adults with insomnia, found that it reduced the time it took to fall asleep by more than 17 minutes compared to placebo. 17 minutes might sound modest, but for someone lying there staring at the clock, it's the difference between a frustrated hour and actually drifting off. Magnesium deficiency is also quietly common in this age group. Absorption decreases with age, and many common medications deplete it further. So there's a good chance some of what's being experienced as a sleep problem is partly a magnesium problem in disguise. The warm water matters too. Drinking something warm triggers the body's rest and recovery response. Heart rate slows slightly, muscle tension drops. The body reads the warmth as a signal it's safe to wind down. Small effect, but real, and completely free. Together, the tart cherry juice earlier in the evening, and the warm magnesium drink closer to bed, you're working through three separate mechanisms at once: tryptophan protection, the brain's natural quieting system, and the body's physical wind-down signal. None of them require a prescription. None of them carry the side effects that sleep medications do, and all of them are available at a regular grocery store. So what does the actual evening look like when you put this together? Stop loading fluids around 2 hours before bed. Front-load your water intake earlier in the day, mornings and early afternoons. That alone reduces nighttime waking for a lot of people, sometimes significantly. Around 7 or 8 in the evening, or whenever your wind-down begins, have your 8 ounces of tart cherry juice, unsweetened Montmorency. That's the tryptophan window opening. It needs time to work through the pathway before you're asleep, so earlier in the evening is better than right at bedtime. Then, about an hour before you actually want to be asleep, the warm magnesium drink. A teaspoon of magnesium glycinate powder dissolved in warm water. Sip it slowly. No screens, no overhead lighting if you can help it. Let what you've set in motion do what it's designed to do. That's the full routine. It takes about 5 minutes to prepare. It costs less than $1 a night, and it works through the body in ways that a single melatonin tablet, which just delivers an external hormone and bypasses the natural production pathway entirely, doesn't. 2 weeks. That's the time frame from the research. 2 weeks of consistent use is when the improvements in nighttime waking and total sleep time became measurable. Not 2 months. 2 weeks. Sleep isn't just about how you feel in the morning. It's about who you get to remain. Think about what happens over 5 or 10 years when this keeps going unaddressed. Someone who starts hesitating before getting behind the wheel at night, their focus isn't quite there, their reaction time feels off, and they know it. Then they stop driving during the day, too. Someone who begins forgetting names, not in a joking way, in the way that frightens them quietly, alone. Appointments slipping, words that were always right there, gone. And someone who pauses at the top of the stairs now, one hand already reaching for the railing, because deep down they don't fully trust their own legs anymore, and they're not sure when that changed. None of that happens overnight. It compounds, one fragmented night at a time, until disrupted sleep becomes the baseline and people stop expecting anything different. It doesn't have to go that way. You know what to reach for now. You know why it works. And you know what to move out of the evening to let it work properly. Think about what a genuinely good night of sleep used to feel like. Waking up before the alarm and feeling ready, a mind that's clear, and a body that moves without that hour of stiffness to work through first. That's not a young person's experience. That's what restorative sleep produces at any age when the conditions are right. That's worth 2 weeks and a bottle of cherry juice. Subscribe if this was useful. There's more content like this every week. Take care of yourself. Good night.